Welcome back to our roundtable discussion. All right, Bailey, we haven't talked much about acreage. A lot of things at play right now. There's been a lot of talk for months about how the fertilizer and chemistry situation, how that would ultimately impact acreage. But as you talk to producers right now, do you think we're going to see a big switch this year?
I'm actually not in that camp. If you look at west of the Mississippi, we had a record anhydrous run last fall. So those acres are probably locked into corn, barring a Mother Nature situation changing that, right? I think we're probably close to that 91 million corn, 89 million beans, potentially a little bit more corn, depending on how many we can pull from cotton, right, Secretary? So I don't think we see much switching.
Well, and that's at a time when prices are extremely competitive. Not a lot of cotton here in Canada, but in the U.S. at least, we have cotton prices this week that hit the highest level since 2011. I mean, it seems like cotton right now is really trying to bid for some of those acres. Do you think we could see that in places like Georgia pull away from soybeans?
Well, I think, again, in Georgia, you may know that cotton and peanuts are those competitive crops that then drove back and forth. In the 08 run-up, 09, we saw much of that Delta cotton go into grains in that way, bean and corns and bean, and many of them sold their cotton headers and bought grain headers in that way. I think, again, you'll see a balance. I think, again, Bailey, I believe her numbers, you're going to see some balance between beans and corn. And in our cotton and peanut areas, you're probably going to see those farmers continue to stay with those crops. Cotton prices there. We don't do enough feed grains in that part of the world to really matter on the overall supply demand.
Well, Bailey, you know, I had an analyst on the show last weekend that said, listen, nothing would surprise me when it comes to this acreage report. There's always a surprise. This year is no different. 100%. What could maybe some of those surprises be possibly?
Potentially throwing out a much larger corn acre number. You know, do they come out with 93 or 94 million? Do they drop that bean acre number based on, you know, a $6 corn futures number? Again, I tend to agree. Nothing surprises me in 2022.
But right now it seems like we need every acre possible. I mean, in the U.S., there's talks about, well, how do we pull some of the CRP acres out and put that into production? Right now, as you look at the global situation, every acre possible, both in the U.S. and Canada, is what's needed. There's not a lot of supply just sitting around.
Yeah, the immediate term situation is wheat. The dilemma we have in a lot of the countries that were dependent upon Black Sea sources, that's winter wheat. And of course, our winter wheat acreage is set. Spring wheat, there's a discussion, well, maybe we'd ramp up the spring wheat. Well, they're not perfect substitutes by any means, so there's some issues there. The dilemma that you have is, you know, what we've been saying with regard to cotton. In Western Canada, where we have our big acres of spring wheat, you know, so goes spring wheat, so goes canola. And what I have heard growers say, there's some areas that are desperately dry. They might look to switch to spring wheat, but for the most part, I think the market says grow canola. So I don't know how much spring wheat's coming.
Tyne, you know, I found that USDA, while I was there, had the numbers, but farmers kind of already know. They are the best determinants of what to plant, when, and how. And they'll make the determination. The USDA is just reporting what farmers are already predetermined they're going to do. So while we are in a crunch regarding supply right now, I am so amazed at our farmers having an infinite capacity to get back up to supply-demand situations and unfortunately lower prices at the same time.
Yeah. Well, it seems like farmers always find a way and figure it out.
Yep.
But when you look at the drought situation, Bailey, in the West, luckily we're hearing some rains in areas of Texas and some of the plains. You know, drought is going to have an impact on planting decisions this year, but in the East it seems like we're already talking about possible planting delays.
Yeah, always we're looking at those moisture issues, excess moisture in parts of Indiana, parts of Ohio. Long time, right? It's only March. Long time till we have to worry about putting a planter in the field, I think.
Rain makes grain.
Yeah, well, maybe too much of a good thing in some areas and desperately needed in others. But as we look at really what's driving prices right now, last week, Bailey, it seems like funds had really exited. There wasn't a lot of action. It seems like almost holiday trade is what some analysts had said. This week, has that changed? Are we seeing funds enter the market once again?
With the Fed announcements in the U.S. about interest rates, it seems as though the outside money is looking at it as a hedge against inflation again. So we're seeing that outside money kind of come back into the markets here the last 2 days and really get interested, especially in the wheat market again.
And now this week, seeing mainstream media talk about food scarcity, talking about the issue of food right now in some of those publications. A lot of people say, well, that may be the end of the rally when you see everyone talking about it, but you look at these prices. I mean, can you compare it to anything in history?
Well, really, I think the dilemma we have is we have to look at the volumes involved, and then the price is kind of a residual from it. And we don't have past experience with these kinds of shifts in volumes. So look, when you're short, the price is going to go up. But I can say as an economist, I don't know by how much, and I don't think really anybody does, right? The dilemma is that our stocks are short, and a lot of those stocks are in places where they're unlikely to be redeployed to areas of scarcity.
That's the most honest thing I've ever heard an economist say.
Admitting they don't know? Well, thank you all for joining us. I really appreciate it. Thank you all. All right, we need